This is where you will learn why questions are so important and how open and closed questions can really work to your advantage. We will be covering how much time to spend on this stage of the SSS system and the difference between open and closed questions. And we'll also be giving you an introduction to spin questions. So how long should be spent on asking questions? Well, if you remember the diagram in my introduction, asking questions takes up almost half of the time, so it's a really important part of the SSS system of selling. And do remember, your prospects should actually do most of the talking, and as somebody said to me once, you've got 2 ears and 1 mouth and you should use them in those proportions. So you really do need to get used to listening in this stage of the system. So how do you get your prospect talking? Well, as this stage of the system implies, it's all about asking questions, and there really are a couple of styles of questions that are generally used, and that is open questions and closed questions. Now we're going to be looking at these 3 aspects of how to get your prospect to talk, and we'll go through them one by one to really try and give you an idea of how to use these types of questions. Asking questions. Well, what I'd like to do here is actually just to share with you a couple of experiences that I went through many years ago that really taught me how crucial it is to ask questions. I was on a sales course with a chap I'll never forget, a chap called Guy, and he was absolutely brilliant and really opened my eyes up to the importance of asking questions. At the time I was actually selling holiday homes, and these were fairly high ticket items. I mean, nowadays you're looking at sort of £50,000 upwards, and these holiday homes were on a park with facilities and family clubs and swimming pools and children's playgrounds, all sorts of things. It's a fantastic product, and I felt at the time that all I really had to be was just an amazing presenter, and I could convince anybody that that our destination was the place to buy their holiday home. So Guy got me out in front of everybody else and said, "Okay, tell me all about your park. Tell me why I should buy with you." So I launched into a massive presentation, really enthusiastic about every aspect of the park, and I got to the end of the presentation and thought, well, I've missed out absolutely nothing. There's no reason that he won't buy with me. So he said, "Okay, ask me the question, will I buy?" So I said, "Okay, would you like to buy today?" He said, "Absolutely not, no way." And I said, "Well, why is that?" I was really confused, having thought that I'd done a great presentation. But he said, "Look, all you've been telling me about is a family clubhouse." He says, "But I haven't got any children. You've been telling me about the children's playground. It's no use to me. I've got no children or grandchildren, so that's never going to come into play for me. You've been talking about the swimming pool. I don't like swimming." He said, "All we like to do is to go walks by the seaside and possibly visit a nice country restaurant occasionally." He said, and you know, from the sound of what you've just explained, this sounds like a really commercial, busy place to be, and that really won't suit us." And it hit me like a ton of bricks as to exactly what I'd done. I'd actually put him off by presenting my product so enthusiastically, as I thought, and well. And he did say that I knew my product inside out, but what I hadn't done is asked him the right questions to reveal what he wanted out of his holiday home. And it really did. I remember that hitting me like a ton of bricks, and I thought, oh my God, how many sales have I actually lost in the past by not asking questions? It was a frightening thought, and ever since that day and that lesson that I went through, and I was probably only 20 years old, something like that, I've always thanked that guy for looking after me and giving me some crucial advice that actually has made me an awful lot of money over the years. And then conversely, there was another situation where I was actually the buyer, and I'd learnt to ask questions and to really analyse what the customer, the client, your prospect, what is it they really want, you know. And then once you find out what they want, then you can present your product in what I call a qualified manner to make sense to them. So whenever I went out buying, it always used to frustrate me that people didn't do that. But actually that was until I met Tim. And Tim was the manager of our local hi-fi shop, and actually it wasn't the the cheapest shop in town, but this guy really knew his stuff and had a good reputation, and I'd dealt with him in business before, so I went along to see him and walked in the shop, and he said, what can I do for you today? And I said, well, I'm looking for a new a CD player. So he said, okay. So the first thing he did was to really start asking me, well, what size room is the player going to be in? How many feet square is it, and this sort of stuff, and where do you sit, and where do you want the speakers, and how loud do you like to play your music? What sort of music do you like? Do you have to consider neighbours? And he asked me so many questions, and right at the end of the questioning he turned around and he said, well, it's fairly obvious what you want. You've got the choice of this one or that one, and he said, I recommend that you probably go for this one. You'll be very, very happy with that one. What could I say? What could I do? The guy has analysed me completely. I can't suddenly turn around and say, well, I need to think about it, because he's asked me how I like to play music. He's asked me, he actually asked me what my budget was as well, so he knew how much I wanted to spend, and he got the solution for me in one. And I actually bought that from him that day because I just didn't need to go anywhere else. Why would I? And I was very, very happy with that system that he sold me, and I never forgot that, and I've used that story to coach a lot of people with. And it was very simple, actually very quick. It didn't take an awful lot of time analysing my needs, but that's what he did. He knew exactly what I wanted, he knew exactly how much I got to spend, and by asking lots and lots of questions, it led him down the path to the right product for me. And again, somebody else I'll never forget taught me a very good lesson there. Let's take a look at open questions. Now, they're questions that normally start with a how, a what, a where, a when, a why, or a who. And if you start a sentence with any of these words, they will generally be classed as open questions. Open questions generally require a longer answer. For example, you could ask, why did you decide to set up your own business? It would be impossible to give a yes or a no answer to this question, and that is the purpose of using open questions. It generally demands more than a one-word response. Open questions are really powerful because they get the customer talking, and then they often reveal unexpected information to you, which can be valuable later on. Now, the most successful salespeople are those that ask the most questions, but not just any questions. Successful salespeople ask smart questions, and they tend to ask them in a particular sequence. So ask questions and do make notes. Don't provide solutions, and most of all, don't do any selling at this stage. Ask until you're absolutely certain, and remember that your questions should lead to your unique selling points. And try to ask questions which demand positive responses, as this creates a very positive buying environment. And asking open questions which demand an explanation will really help you when it comes to doing your qualified presentation a little bit later on. So make notes as you go along, and make sure your prospect can see that you're making notes, and note down any concerns that they may have as you go along, because you can come back to these later and overcome any objections. Now, a closed question can be answered with a single word, either yes or no. They are less powerful than open questions, but can be very useful with some types of customer. Now, unbeknown to you, your prospect has already got 9 hidden buyer questions that he's got all lined up for you already. The first one is, why have I decided to see you? He's probably going to be a really busy guy, and he's sat there thinking, oh, why did I bother to see this guy? What am I going to get from him? So you're there now, and he's now asking himself, why should I take time to listen to you? So you've got to prove that you're there to help him. And he's actually thinking, well, okay, I've got to go through this now. What problem would I like solved? He's also thinking what benefits you might have to offer his business. And how will you support these benefits? So if you can come up with some solutions, how are you going to make sure they work for him? And one of the biggest ones of all is, why should I trust you? So this is where your credibility statements come in that we talked about in lesson 2. Why should I trust your company? Also goes back to your credibility statement. So if he's got these hidden questions, you really need to have answered these as we're going along. And then one of the biggest ones, why should I make a decision to proceed? I could talk to anybody. I could go to any company, bring in any other sales guy who's going to be very nice. Why should I make a decision? I don't really need to. And the big one, if I do make a decision, why do I need to proceed today? I don't have to make a decision. I can make my mind up any time. So all these questions, these 9 questions, will be going on in the background whilst you're there doing your presentations. So if you've already got answers to these questions, you've already thought through the answers, and you've built them into your presentation, you'll be in a very, very strong position to take the order on the day. So as I said right at the beginning of this lesson, asking questions is really, really crucial, and has won me more business than I could have ever dreamt of. I mean, it is very, very powerful, and it does surprise me still that people don't do it. But getting a little bit deeper into the strategy now of asking questions, I am a big advocate of the spin strategy, which we'll be going into in lesson number 4 in much more detail. But just to introduce you to it, the spin strategy is, first of all, situation questions, and these are asking open questions again, which are really powerful, as we've just learned. But it's open questions about their current situation. What are they feeling right now? What problems have they got right now? And then problem questions are asking and finding out and investigating what problems are coming up because of their current situation, and that can be a really powerful tool later on when you're doing your presentation. Then we've got implication questions, and so this is asking what the effect the problems of the current situation are actually giving to the client or to the prospect. So implication questions. Then need payoff questions, which are really trying to evaluate how much worth is given to your solution that you can provide to solve all the prospect's problems. So it's how much value will your prospect actually give to your solution, and that again can make a massive difference when it comes to making the decision on the day. To recap then, what do we need to remember from today's lesson? We need to prepare our answers to the hidden questions in advance, and we must ask questions, and we've got to learn to listen and make notes. And don't provide solutions at this stage. Save them for later on. It's very, very tempting to ask a question and think, oh, I can really help him there, and you dive in with the answer. Don't do that. That's fatal, because you need to save that for later on for your presentation, so you can present the answers in a very clear and logical way. And most of all, please don't do any selling at this stage. You're asking questions, you're finding out information. You can't start selling until you've got all that information lined up, till you've got pretty well all the objections out of the way, you really understand your prospects' needs and what's important to them. So until you know that, don't do any selling. Once again, it's over to you now. So what I'd like you to do is to spend 20 or 30 minutes preparing answers to your next prospect's hidden questions.